So I recently posted about personal values, and I was so excited to see your responses and how many people were taking the time to do this sort and figure out their top 5 values. I ended the post with a question for you. How do you energize your values? Well, I'm back today with the answer to that question. It comes back to 2 researchers, Bas Verplanken and Rob Holland, who were funded by the Research Council of Norway. What really sparked this idea for me was this quote from that study: that when we energize our values, they can influence our behavior. Now, the researchers tested this in several different studies. They did 5 different experiments where they tested people who said that they valued eco-consciousness and sustainability, but then put them in situations where sustainability wasn't the easy choice. 2 major themes emerged from their research of what it takes to turn our values into actions. The first is having the right type of values. So you've already gone about doing that value sort and finding your top 5 values. But the research found that if these aren't central to your self-concept, your identity, then they won't have an impact on your behaviors and actions. So there's a couple questions you can ask yourself to figure out if the values you've selected really connect to your self-concept. The first is about resonance. When you read this value, does it stir a feeling of identity strong within you? Does this feel like who you are? And the second is about consistency. Can you find themes of this pattern across your life, not just in one instance, but in your work, in your home, in your love life, that this is something that you've prioritized? Once you're sure that you have your central values or your core values, then we can turn towards energizing them. So, how do you energize your values? Another word for energizing is cognitive activation, or priming. The researchers used 2 major strategies for energizing values. The first were environmental cues, and the second was self-reflection. Personally, I think environmental cues are such a powerful way to keep your values alive and well. So this little poster you see here, I created a vision board for each of my values. So my husband and I sat down together, we defined our values, created our own definitions, and then created those vision boards of what that looked like in our lives. You can also add these visual cues everywhere and anywhere. So make it the background of your cell phone. Change your password to be 1 or 2 of your values. That way you're typing it every time you log in. And even change the artwork in your house to reflect your values. Anytime that you can add an environmental cue, the more likely you are to actually live out those values. The second piece comes to self-reflection, and there were 2 types of reflection that were particularly powerful in energizing values. The first is self-focus activation. So as simple as this sounds, just reminding yourself of what your values are. So one strategy I have for this is a reflection question of, what did I do today that aligned with my values? The second question, and I find this is even more interesting, is the researchers call this term restoring value congruence. And it's the idea that when you act in a way that's not in alignment with your values, and if you reflect on it, you'll be more inclined to correct that behavior in the future. So the second journaling question that I often ask myself is, what did I do today that drained my cup, that didn't feel aligned to my values? So taking just a moment to reflect both on what aligned and didn't align with my values shows in the research that we can energize those values. When you're aligned with your values, you have a greater sense of purpose. The work that you do matters and is meaningful. To summarize, we learned 3 major ways you can energize your values. The first is to know what your core values are. The second is to utilize environmental cues in the world around you. And the third is to use reflection of both how your actions aligned with and didn't align with your values to keep yourself in check. Taking those little steps every day to reaffirm those values, even once a week, can be definitely a life changer. So let me know, how do you energize your values?